Shabbat Shalom and Ahava. Welcome to Who's Your Rabbi? And this is Jaime. And for the intent of disseminating the message much quicker, I decided to go with an audio file, just because it's a little bit easier to upload and then it gives me a little bit more time to be able to give you a little bit of a message. So there's a couple of things we're going to tackle. The first thing we're going to tackle is a Q&A, and basically just kind of give you an explanation of the ministry and what the reason for it or the purpose of it is, and just kind of answer some of those questions that you might have along the way. And so one of the things I wanted to explain was basically why the name, and we're going to tackle that in two parts. And first we're going to go with the ministry, Yeshua FC. That's the name of the ministry, and the reason I chose that name, obviously, it's Jesus' actual Aramaic name, and it means salvation, or Yahweh saves, literally. And the FC part is I'm a bit of a sports fanatic, so FC stands for in some cases football club or soccer club, but it's actually open to different interpretations. But what I wanted to do with the ministry is essentially use sports as a means to propagate the message, and that's pretty much the reason for that. But the second name, the name of the show, Who's Your Rabbi, actually has to do with a couple of reasons. The first being that in the New Testament, on at least 15 occasions, the word rabbi shows up, and in most cases that is actually situated to Jesus himself, or directed to Jesus himself. The word rabbi comes from the word rav, which means great. Rabbi literally means my teacher or my great one. And being that we follow Yeshua, Jesus, he is the source of the actual meaning. But there's also a rabbi that I listened to by the name of Daniel Lappin, and he has one of his catchphrases is that everybody needs a rabbi. And so when I came about this and I started thinking about different names, this one came about, and in particular, that's really the main two reasons as to why. So, who's my rabbi? Jesus, or Yeshua. And seeing it, this is a ministry that focuses on teaching about Jesus, and him and his teachings, basically. We're going to put that back into context and perspective in both the biblical and historical points. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea as to why. As I said, the primary purpose of Who's Your Rabbi is it's a teaching ministry. We're here to teach the people about Jesus and Christianity per se, but put it into a proper messianic, Jewish, Hebraic context, so that we can actually understand some of the situations and some of the things that go on in the New Testament that don't really make sense, and then you have a bunch of what I like to call biblical gymnastics that people go through hoops and loops through to try to explain certain things, but they just don't make sense because they're not in their proper context. But when you put it back into context, everything makes sense. And so that's the primary purpose for the ministry. We want to put out some materials out there, some audio, video, and print form eventually, and put Jesus, the apostles, Paul, and his teachings back into the proper context, and then tackle some of the situations that came shortly after them, where a lot of the discrepancies came about. The ministry basically started 2011 as far as being more active since 2015, and we're it's been a project that's been on my mind for some time now, and just given the circumstances, we have the opportunity to actually get the message out there. The next question, where can you find us? You can find us on YouTube as of right now. My channel's name is Jaime Visión, and I'm working on a website, and so finally we can put a lot of the materials on there. And how you can get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me through the ministry email, which is yeshuafc.izm@gmail.com, and just shoot your questions, and then I'll make sure to reply and get a hold of you. But I just kind of wanted to answer some of those questions, because we're basically, seems like we're coming out of nowhere, but this has been a plan, and we'll tackle some questions as we go along. But the actual teaching that I wanted to focus on is today's basically Saturday, April the 4th, and for many or some, the Lent period is coming to an end. And the reason I say many or some is because it depends on what calendar, like we talked about previously, you're going about, and what tradition you actually follow. So Catholicism, it doesn't go until next week, because it kind of intermingles with the Passion Week, and we're gonna discuss those matters shortly. And I have not checked when the Orthodox Lent period and Easter is this year, but it's typically about 1 to 2 weeks after. It fluctuates because of their calculations and the way they go about things. But the question I wanted to place is to Lent or not to Lent? And the biblical basis for this is basically found in Matthew 4, verses 1 through 11, Mark 1, verses 9 through 13, Luke 4, verses 1 through 13. And in the book of John, it only makes a reference to the baptism. The other ones make the reference to the baptism of Christ. And then right after it, immediately it says that he goes into the wilderness for a period of 40 days, 40 nights. And the first thing I wanted to say is that in the English language, the word Lent actually comes from a Germanic root, and it actually has a pagan background. So it is an improper term to use. The Romance or Latin languages have a root that basically the terminology is in reference to the 40 days. In Spanish, in Portuguese, it's Quaresma. And so it makes a more actual correct reference to the actual meaning of the time period. And basically what happens here is that after Jesus gets baptized, he goes into the wilderness for a period of testing. And it says it's 40 days, 40 nights. And there's a couple of accounts. The one I want to actually focus on is the one in Luke, because it gives us a little bit of insight into what the actual calendar time span would have been, because of what happens right after that. So in the Hebrew calendar, there is a time period that is referred to as the 40 days of awe, and this is during the month of Elul, going into the first 10 days of the month of Tishrei. And so in the month of Tishrei, what happens is that the fall festivals fall on that time frame, starting with Yom Teruah, or in modern times it's referred to as Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year. And we'll get into a more detailed discussion as to what the differences are. But goes after that, in the 10th day of Tishrei is the Day of Atonement, or known as Yom Kippur. And so in Luke, what happens is that after Jesus comes out of this, he goes into the synagogue, and he's invited to read a portion of the Haftarah, or the Half Torah. And basically the Half Torah or the Haftarah is the prophets. Okay, so in the first century, when Jesus was around, what was being practiced was a liturgical cycle of 3 years. And so on the day that he goes into the synagogue, they had at this point already incorporated the reading of the prophets, and he gets invited up to read from Isaiah 61, and he basically makes a proclamation that on that day you've seen that being fulfilled. Excuse me. The other Gospel of Matthew gives you a little bit more detail as to, the testing. At the end of the 40-day periods, Satan basically shows up and tests Jesus, and there's a little back and forth with some scriptures, where Satan uses some scriptures or a twist on the scriptures, and Jesus replies back with scriptures, and at the end Jesus wins, and it says he leaves them for another time. But as I was saying, the number 40 is actually a uh, interesting number because it shows up on multiple occasions, and the basis for it is 4 times 10. 4 equals seasons, and 10 equals judgment. So the number 40 basically gives you a season of judgment or trial. And if you see the examples of the times that when this actually shows up, you'll see that there is some kind of a testing with this reference to the number 40, with the number 40. A couple of the examples are the 40 days and 40 nights with Noah during the flood. Moses on 2 occasions goes up Mount Sinai to receive the commandments. And this parallels actually with the ministry of Jesus also, because there's 2 40-day periods. The one at the beginning, which is this one we're talking about, and then at the end after the resurrection, Jesus is around for another 40 days. The other interesting fact is that he goes into the midbar, into the wilderness. And so the word midbar actually means desert or wilderness. And the book of Bamidbar, or the book of Numbers, as you may commonly know it in English, actually means in the desert. And this book makes a reference to the 38 of the 40 years after the Exodus, where they're in the wilderness. And the other interesting fact is that the word midbar also contains the word davar, or which means words, or word. I'm sorry. And so the book of Deuteronomy in Hebrew is called Devarim, which means words. So there's a little play on words, and there's a connection between the three. All these 3 books are sequential: Exodus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And they for the most part tell you the story of Moses and the people of Israel, the Israelites, during the time that they were in the wilderness. So now for a little bit more of a pragmatic approach, should we observe this 40-day period? Because some of the things that I've heard are that, especially here in the States, is that it's a Catholic thing. Maybe the Anglicans or the Episcopalians, fall into that category. But it's not a Catholic thing. It's actually, there's biblical basis, as I showed you. And if we were to basically put into context what the word Christian means, is basically somebody who imitates his teacher, who is the Christ, or is Christ-like. Basically, little Christ is kind of the Greek terminology that you can kind of define there. And so if we're meant to be little Christ, then and he's our teacher, then we should mimic this. But on the other hand, there is no command to do so. The Catholic tradition also has puts it into practice, and that's one of the things where they're doing something kind of right. And I say kind of because, like I said, the period intertwines with the Passion or the Holy Week, last week of Jesus' life. And so there's an issue there, because one is at the beginning of the ministry and the other is at the end of his ministry. And so they're two separate periods to begin with. That is part of what the Orthodox argue. The Eastern Orthodox tradition argues the fact that they are two separate things, but they too are at fault with their calculations, because they use their Julian calendar to do their calculations, amongst the fact that they also don't want to have anything to do with the Jewish root of the whole thing. And so they that's why their Easter is, a couple weeks out a lot of the time. And so they do treat this Lenten period or the period of the 40 days as a separate period, running into conjunction, but really from a historical standpoint, like I pointed out in Luke, this would have taken place in about the August September period, because Tishrei usually falls mid to late September going into October, and so this is at the end of the summer period, and not during the winter going into the spring period, which is what the majority of the people who actually observe this time frame actually place it at. And like I was saying, the issue with the Catholic calculation of this period is that it intertwines primarily with the Passion Week, and they're two separate periods. But the part that they do have correct is more leaning towards the Passion Week, because going from a biblical and historical standpoint, using the calendar, the Sunday before the Passover would be the day that he goes into Jerusalem, and then the rest of the Passion account takes place. And so, in order for the resurrection to fall on the Sunday after the Passover, which is what the Bible says, you have to take into account the festival of Passover and do the calculations from there. Sadly enough, most Christians that are not of the Catholic tradition, even though they observe some of this period, in particular Resurrection Sunday or Easter, as it is called, don't actually have an idea that the calculations actually have to or are based off of the biblical account, coordinating the Hebrew calendar with the Gregorian calendar, which is the one that's used in the West. And so that's how you get that there. But I just kind of wanted to put this out there, kind of give you a basic idea. We can get into more details about the situation. I just wanted to put out a something that gives you a good summarized version, and hopefully it explains some of the reasoning behind the situation. But like I said, it's not commanded. And should you observe it, I'll leave that up to you. I believe, this is my personal belief, that if we're trying to be Christ-like and follow, Jesus, the Messiah, then why shouldn't we honor this part of his life? As long as we keep it on the biblical level, then we're practicing good, sound doctrine. But like I said, it's not commanded. Nobody's obligated to do anything. It's a choice, and some of the things that are attached to it, you can do with or do away with. But if we keep it at its purest form, this is a period where Jesus went out to the wilderness, fasted, kind of prepared for his ministry. So it's a good time for us to kind of go through what we've done in the previous year, what we think we need to learn or grow in, maybe work on some of the areas that we need to work on, so that we come out of this period refreshed. But like I said, at the end of the day, it's your choice, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of an explanation. There's a lot of erroneous teachings, or because people just don't know. For the most part, it seems like people are not properly educated on the matter, and so they make comments or certain things that to one side might be disrespectful, and that's not the point. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this. Like I said, you can get a hold of me at yeshuafc.izm at gmail.com, and stay tuned on YouTube. And until next time, Psalm 122 verse 6 says, Shalom, Shalom, Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And see you next time. Bye.